Hello, my name is Mike Unkelbach, and I'm president and owner of Bach Insurance Group. What I want to talk to you about for a minute is a product that most of you know exists, but you haven't really thought through, and that's critical illness. And I kind of feel like I'm in a pretty unique place to help you, and the reason for that is I've actually cashed the check. I wrote myself a critical illness policy about 7 years ago, and 4 years ago was told those dreaded words, "You have cancer." When you actually hear those words, "I'm sorry, you have cancer," it's a life-changing day. I'll never forget the two thoughts that went through my mind. Number one, my youngest daughter was a freshman in high school, and I had to see her graduate. The second thought that went through my mind right after Dr. Zigman said, "Mike, you have cancer," was I've never held any of my grandchildren. Well, I'm glad to tell you this year, my youngest, my baby girl, will graduate from high school, and I'll watch her do that, and I've already held my first grandchild. So once you're over the initial shock of being told that you have cancer, and you go home and you're sitting with your family, emotionally, you're just wiped out. You've got all these thoughts running through your mind. Am I going to live? Am I going to die? And all of a sudden, you begin to think about, man, I'm not going to have a lot of time to work. I've got a lot of things I've got to deal with. My family members were telling me, look, priority one is get you well. We need to get you well. Inside, though, as the primary breadwinner and business owner, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss all of these things. I've got all of these health concerns that I've got to deal with, but more importantly, the thoughts of how do I make payroll if I'm not at my business? How do I just keep my business open if I'm going to be gone for an extended amount of time? Race through your head thoughts of the things that you knew you might have to plan for eventually, but you really didn't do a very good job of doing it. Part of my reality was the fact that I had actually purchased a critical illness policy. So once the diagnosis is complete, we've sent the paperwork in to Assurity. Just a few weeks later, a check shows up. And it's a rather significant check. And all of a sudden, I can sit down with my wife, and I'll never forget, the check shows up in the FedEx envelope. We sat down at the kitchen table. We tear the FedEx envelope up. We pull out the check. We set it down on the kitchen table, and I'm sitting cat-a-corner across from her with a cup of coffee, and I watch her shoulders go. Just this tremendous sense of relief, because here's what that check meant to us. We were going to be able to run our household for the next 1 to 2 years very easily with the money. We weren't going to have to worry about whether or not we could make our house payment or our car payments. And most importantly, that you just had enough money come in to cover expenses. You know, everybody says money's not everything, and I totally agree with that, except for when you need it, and then it ranks right up there with oxygen. Being an insurance agent, you know, what we do is we sell products that come to the rescue at a time of dire need. Here's the question. Who's coming to your rescue if you're like me and one day Dr. Zigman tells you you have cancer? Let me answer that for you. If you haven't come to your rescue, nobody is. CI policy can eliminate that. Having a critical illness policy, getting that check, and not having to deal with cash flow problems while you're battling literally for your life, because if you're cashing that critical illness check, you've been told you have cancer, you've probably had a heart attack, you've had a stroke, you've got things going on in your life. You need to focus on getting you better, not worrying about how you're going to pay the water bill next month. And that's what my critical illness policy did for me. It took care of my household expenses, and it took care of my business expenses, and it gave me time to take care of me.